For centuries, warfare has been defined by a simple truth. Victory belongs to those who control the skies. By the early years of World War II, this principle had become doctrine. Nations poured resources into building faster fighters, heavier bombers, more devastating weapons. The skies belonged to the mighty, the powerful, the purpose-built machines of war. And then came an aircraft so unremarkable, so seemingly inadequate, that military officers literally laughed when they first saw it in combat configuration. They called it slow. They called it obsolete. They called it a joke. History would prove them catastrophically wrong. The Douglas DC-3 began its life in 1935 as a civilian passenger aircraft, designed not for war but for the mundane business of moving people between American cities. It was comfortable, reliable, economical, everything a commercial airline wanted and everything a military planner dismissed. When war erupted across Europe and the Pacific, the world's air forces flew purpose-built fighters like the Spitfire and Zero, bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress. These were machines engineered from the first rivet for a single purpose: to dominate and destroy. The DC-3, redesignated as the C-47 Skytrain in military service, seemed to have no place among them. It carried cargo, it transported troops. It was a flying truck, nothing more. Pilots called it the Gooney Bird, and the nickname wasn't affectionate, it was mocking. This lumbering transport, with its maximum speed of just 230 miles per hour, appeared destined to play a supporting role while real warplanes decided the fate of nations. But war has a way of revealing truths that peacetime obscures, and the first truth the C-47 revealed was this: wars are not won by the planes that fight, they are won by the planes that deliver. While fighters dueled in the clouds and bombers pounded cities, the unglamorous C-47 became the lifeblood of Allied operations. It carried paratroopers into Normandy on D-Day, each aircraft packed with men about to jump into the darkness over occupied France. It supplied the besieged garrison at Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge, flying through weather that grounded everything else, dropping food and ammunition to soldiers who would have otherwise perished. It evacuated wounded from jungle airstrips in Burma, turned around and brought in reinforcements. General Dwight Eisenhower would later call it one of the four most important weapons of World War II, alongside the bazooka, the jeep, and the atomic bomb. The joke plane had become indispensable. But the true transformation, the moment this aircraft fundamentally redefined aerial warfare, came not from what it carried, but from how military minds reimagined what an aircraft could be. In 1943, desperate Allied commanders in the Pacific faced an impossible problem. Japanese troops moved freely at night, using darkness to reinforce positions, launch surprise attacks, and evacuate before dawn. Allied bombers were nearly useless in darkness. They couldn't find targets, couldn't aim accurately, couldn't distinguish friend from foe. The Japanese owned the night, and then a handful of innovative officers looked at the humble C-47 and saw something no one else had seen: a weapons platform. The modifications were crude at first, almost comically improvised. Engineers mounted machine guns in the cargo doors. They welded firing positions along the fuselage. They installed crude aiming systems and added ammunition racks where passengers once sat. The first gunship conversions looked like something built in a garage, held together with determination and desperation. Military brass were skeptical. How could a slow, unarmed transport become an effective weapon? Its lack of speed made it vulnerable. Its size made it an easy target. Its design was all wrong for combat. But the innovators understood something the traditionalists missed. The C-47's weaknesses could become strengths if you changed the rules of engagement. The first combat mission silenced every critic. Flying low and slow, the very characteristics that made it seem vulnerable, the AC-47 gunship could orbit a target for hours, pouring sustained fire onto enemy positions with unprecedented accuracy. Its cargo capacity, designed for passengers and supplies, now held thousands of rounds of ammunition and banks of devastating miniguns. What had been a liability, its lack of speed, became an asset. Fast fighters screamed overhead and were gone in seconds. The AC-47 circled like a patient predator, its side-mounted weapons creating a cone of fire so dense that soldiers on the ground called it Puff the Magic Dragon. One aircraft could defend an entire firebase, suppress enemy movements across miles of territory, and provide close air support with precision that dedicated attack aircraft couldn't match. The tactical revolution was immediate and profound. Enemy forces that had operated freely under cover of darkness now found themselves exposed, vulnerable, hunted. The psychological impact was devastating. Nowhere was safe, no movement went unpunished. North Vietnamese troops in the later Vietnam conflict learned to fear the sound of the AC-47's engines more than they feared the faster, more powerful jets, because the gunship could see them, find them, and eliminate them with methodical efficiency. The joke plane had become the most feared aircraft in the theater. But, the strategic implications reached far beyond any single battlefield. The success of the AC-47 actually forced military planners all over the world to reconsider some pretty fundamental assumptions about aircraft design and combat doctrine. For decades, the pursuit had been singular, faster, higher, more heavily armed, purpose-built combat aircraft. The gunship concept, though, revealed that adaptation and innovation often matter more than just raw specifications. Other nations rushed to develop their own conversions. The United States refined the concept, eventually mounting howitzers and cannons in larger aircraft like the AC-130, creating flying artillery platforms of, almost apocalyptic destructive power. The Soviet Union, China, and dozens of other nations studied the lessons and applied them to their own air forces. The legacy extends directly into our modern age. Today's drones, those, controversial, omnipresent tools of contemporary warfare, are the spiritual descendants of that first weaponized C-47. They share the same fundamental insight that an aircraft doesn't need to be fast or agile or designed for combat to be devastatingly effective. It needs to loiter, to observe, to strike with precision, and to stay on station longer than the enemy can endure. The joke plane pioneered the concept of persistent aerial presence, the idea that controlling airspace isn't about brief moments of overwhelming force, but about constant, unblinking vigilance. Every Predator drone, every Reaper conducting strikes in distant conflicts carries the DNA of that improvised gunship from 1943. The story of the C-47 teaches us something profound about innovation and human ingenuity. The next revolutionary technology, the next weapon, tool, or idea that changes everything, probably doesn't look revolutionary today. It's likely sitting right in front of us, dismissed as ordinary, maybe even mocked as inadequate, overlooked because it doesn't fit our expectations of what power should look like. The most dangerous assumptions are the ones we don't know we're making. The most costly mistakes are the opportunities we dismiss because they seem too simple, too unglamorous, too different from what came before. Somewhere right now, someone is looking at an unremarkable technology and seeing its true potential. Somewhere, an innovation that seems like a joke is about to change the world. The question isn't whether it's happening. History guarantees it is. The question is whether we're paying attention, whether we have the vision to recognize transformation before it becomes obvious, whether we can see past our assumptions to the truth hiding in plain sight. Subscribe to Through Time to explore more moments when the overlooked became unstoppable, when innovation triumphed over tradition, and when humanity's capacity for adaptation proved stronger than any weapon. Share this story with anyone who needs reminding that the future doesn't always arrive in the package we expect. The next joke plane is already among us. We just haven't recognized it yet.